Moves in Germany to stamp out extremism. But could the country's plan to ban neo-Nazis backfire? Also on today's program, flag politics. As New Zealand votes on its flag's future, we ask, why do people care? And in Picture This, rampaging elephants. How deforestation is causing a surge in attacks across India. Hello and welcome to the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Germany's top court is being urged to ban the extreme right National Democratic Party. The party, the state says, is founded on racism, anti-Semitism and revisionist ideology. But the NPD says their party fills a political gap at a time when many Germans are concerned by the refugee crisis affecting the continent. The body bringing the case to court say they have evidence to prove the NPD poses a threat to Germany's democracy. But where should the line be drawn in banning political parties? Could such a policy be used to silence free speech or create a totalitarian regime? And does driving parties underground make them more violent, more extreme? Today's newsmaker is Germany's extreme right NPD party, as we ask under what circumstances a political party should be banned.
Sie ist ausländerfeindlich, aggressive.
Diesen Rassismus und Antisemitismus.
It's in this room that Germany could rid itself of what some people consider a dangerous scourge. The right-wing National Democratic Party, or the NPD. The Federal Constitutional Court has the power to decide this.
Parties are considered unconstitutional if their goal or behavior of their supporters aim to affect or eliminate the democratic fundamental order.
The German government backs the ban and wants to see the NPD gone. It has very good reasons.
Sie ist antisemitisch.
It is anti-Semitic, it's xenophobic, and it's one of the intellectual instigators behind the violence, at least indirectly, which we have to deal with in many parts of Germany these days.
Violence is what sparked the NPD. It rose out of the ruins of World War II Germany. It was established in 1964 as a successor to the German Reich Party. Critics say effectively its policies mirror some of the Nazi parties: anti-immigration, anti-multiculturalism. The party began to see an upsurge in ideological support. So much so that by the year 2000, German officials said violence against immigrants had reached the highest level since the Second World War. At least 10 people were murdered, mostly Germans of Turkish origin. The attacks were blamed on Nazi sympathizers and those tied to groups like the NPD. The violence forced the state's hand and it tried to ban the party, but it failed. So now it's trying again. The rise of the right has left a bitter taste in the Chancellor's mouth. Angela Merkel is under pressure to put a lid on them. The case to ban the NPD comes at a time when record numbers of migrants are arriving at Europe's borders. The influx of people into the EU, most notably Germany, is playing into the hands of its anti-immigration platform. But the NPD and its supporters say banning the party crushes the right to freedom of expression and political representation.
If we look at the broader political context, then we do see that the NPD is highly relevant, because all the things the NPD has been warning against for years is happening now on the political stage.
Right-wing parties are exploiting rising xenophobia. But at least for the NPD, that hasn't translated to rising political success. It's never received enough political support to enter parliament. But at the moment, it doesn't need a political mandate to rally Germans behind right-wing discourse. Soraya Lenny, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now to debate whether banning political parties is necessary, or if it poses a threat to political freedoms is Yiannis Baboulias. He's a Greek analyst and investigative journalist in Athens. And in New York is Anetta Kahana from the Amadeo Antonio Foundation, which focuses on tackling neo-Nazism in Germany. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Anetta, let me start with you. Is the NPD a dangerous party that needs to be banned?
No, I don't think so. I think it is a dangerous party, but it doesn't need to be banned because everything that politicians want to ban are things like racism, anti-Semitism, and right-wing attitudes, and you cannot ban this. You also can ban a party if there is a threat for democracy, that they are nearly taking over the power in this country. But this party is not strong enough to take over the power.
Anetta,
so I'm completely against banning the party.
Anetta, a lot of people overuse Nazism as an analogy. They try to apply it, usually quite falsely, to everything that's happening. But, you know, this is the country where the Nazis came to power and did unspeakable things, both within the country and to the region, and one could argue the world. Shouldn't that perhaps give us some deeper understanding to why German politicians might want to put a lot on this before things get out of control?
Yes, of course. They have to take a lot of measures to fight right-wing extremism, racism, anti-Semitism, whatever you want. But to ban the party, the motivation of banning the party is motivation of moral things and moral attitudes or political attitudes and not juridical attitudes. So, of course, you can ban the party, but then you haven't solved the problem. I think that we should do a lot of things against right-wing extremism and everything that has to do with that. But actually, the NPD is not relevant very much because we have a new right populistic party that is called AfD, and they took over all the strategies and all this thinking. So what shall be done next? Shall we ban the next party then? No, we have to fight the problems that are coming up with electing these parties.
Okay, Yiannis, should the German government just leave these guys to dwindle away into complete insignificance and not ban them?
Well, to begin with, I have to state that banning any party on ideological grounds is not okay. It's not something that liberal democracies are supposed to do. I don't believe in curtailing the freedom of speech in any way. But in the case of neo-Nazi parties, and especially parties like the Golden Dawn here in Greece, what we've seen is that they use parliamentary privileges, public funds, and every measure in their disposal to actually fund illegal activities, to organize in paramilitary fashion, and to disrupt the peace and openly mock liberal democracy. When you deal with parties that are actually taking further action outside the parliament, then you're well within your rights as a liberal democracy to try and ban them.
But Yiannis, wouldn't they then get even deeper involved in those things that are more than just the parliament or more than just politics? If you say, hey, you can't play on our playground, they're going to take you to their playground and it might be far more violent.
I think there's no empirical evidence for this. If anything, experience has shown that the more legitimacy these parties enjoy, the more they feel free to actually go out and do these things. The Golden Dawn used to be very violent, but once it got into parliament, that's when they really went for it. There's no empirical evidence that shows that when you ban something, that actually becomes more dangerous or that it becomes bigger. I know it sounds like common sense, but in fact, this has never been shown to be true with far-right parties or, in fact, any other party. Usually, when parties are pushed outside of the mainstream and they lose the sort of coverage, the sort of resources that come with being mainstream parties, they actually dwindle away. They go back in their little corner, and from there, yes, they can take up very violent activities, but that doesn't, when they're in the spotlight, when they're in parliament, that doesn't stop them. Let's not forget that the Golden Dawn murdered Pavlos Fyssas in 2013 while they were in parliament. They didn't do it when they were outside. The reason they are actually on trial right now is for stuff they did while they were in parliament.
Okay, Anetta, strip them of their legitimacy and let them go back into their little corner. That's what Yiannis is saying.
Yes, well, the problem in Germany is a little bit different because the NPD is strong because of the informal organizations of neo-Nazi groups. So when they support NPDs, NPD will be more or less powerful in certain regions. If they don't support them, then they will not. But you cannot ban these nucleus, these little groups of neo-Nazis, because they don't need the NPD to be violent, to make their propaganda, and to dominate the streets. So. Of course, there are some resources that the NPD probably gets when they are in parliaments, but this is not so much as, I think some politicians have the motivation to ban the NPD just because they don't want to discuss the issues. They don't want to really fight right-wing extremism, racism, and all this. They don't really want to stand up for immigration or for the protection of immigrants. And it's more easy. It's more easy to ban than this political party than to take a position. And if the NPD is not there, there will be another party to take over this attitude. So you have to discuss these problems, and you have to take some measures. For instance, we have a quite strong NPD group in Saxony. Now, Saxony is the place where most of the refugees hostels are burning, people are attacking refugees. This is a horrible situation right now there. But in the other countries in Eastern Germany or in Western Germany, the problem is not so high. So why is it? Because the government of Saxony never discussed the issue. So you can ban the NPD in Saxony, but this problem will not go away as long as in the society and in the political level the problems are not discussed and there are no measures taken. That's what I think. I think it's a problem of of laziness, also of political laziness, not to confront the problems.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting, connecting it to German authorities and Angela Merkel wanting to get everyone on the same page during the migrant crisis. Fascinating political developments there. Yiannis, I wonder who gets to decide when we talk of being the arbiter of who's a legitimate political party and who is not. Because if we're banning parties because it's a slippery slope to fascism, shouldn't we also be banning parties that might lead to a slippery slope to Stalinism, and ban parties who might lead on that slippery slope to a caliphate, and so on and so forth? I mean, I see you smiling. Am I talking nonsense here?
No, you're not talking nonsense. It's just like I think there is no way for any party to actually advocate for Stalinism in the Western world, at least. But in this sense, I understand what you're saying, that no one actually has the legitimacy to judge this. In fact, when a party is showing that that it's going out of its way to murder people, to attack people, to incite violence, well, the authorities, the courts, are in charge of judging if this is a legitimate party or if it's operating as a front for a group that's looking to subvert and overthrow democracy, or at least order in the country.
Point well put. We are running out of time, so I want to get a final thought from Anetta. Anetta, the Constitutional Court is hearing the arguments. Do you trust that they will make a fair decision?
Yes, I think they will make a fair decision. I hope they will ban it, because starting this process is good to end it in the right way. But anyhow, I think that law and police in our countries have to persecute crime. So if this is a political crime, they have to persecute it, and not so much trying to work with this banning party thing, you know. And I hope they will ban it now, finally. But just because the other wait. I want them to ban it, because if this is the second time they lose, that would be very bad. That would be a very strong propaganda for the NPD.
Oh yeah, interesting point you make there. Anetta, Kahana and Yiannis Baboulias, thank you very much for joining us. It was good to talk to you. Still to come on the Newsmakers, pride or prejudice? What your country's flag says about you. And in Picture This, why elephant rampages are on the rise in India. It's not every day people get the opportunity to redesign their country's flag. But today, New Zealanders are having their say. A referendum on whether to change the country's flag or keep it will take place over the next 3 weeks. The outcome of the vote could see the nation drop the Union Jack emblem for a silver fern. The idea came from Prime Minister Ted Kaye, frustrated with people confusing the Kiwi flag with Australia's one. Some have embraced the historic opportunity, but others question whether the whole thing was even necessary. Our very own resident Kiwi, Yvette McCullough, reports.
What's in a flag? Identity, tradition, national pride. Some flags represent positive values, idealism, and unity. Others have the power to offend. Seen as a symbol of former times, many would rather forget. And in one country, flag politics are being put to the people to decide on a new hallmark for their country. Since New Zealand became a colony of Great Britain, the Union Jack has been an element of its flag, but that may soon be replaced by a silver fern. A chance to move away from Mother England and embrace the Kiwi identity. It's also to end the confusion between the New Zealand flag and that of its neighbour and bitter sporting rival, Australia. And so the flag's future was put in the hands of the people. New Zealanders submitted more than 10,000 entries. But now it's down to the choice between two, to keep the old flag or change it to this. Prime Minister Ted Kaye's made no secret of his preference.
The history of the fern is, as we know, well over 100 and something years. The world knows that symbol.
Polls suggest around 2/3 of Kiwis are against changing the flag. The whole process could cost taxpayers $26 million, and critics say they didn't even ask for it. Over the years, flags have come and gone. South Africa staged a competition in 1993 to change its flag to mark the end of apartheid. The new flag was only meant to be temporary, but it stuck. Sometimes flags are changed by politicians. Venezuela's late President Hugo Chavez added an 8th star in 2006 to honour the states freed by his independence hero, Simon Bolivar. He also flipped the horse in the coat of arms to reflect his left-leaning politics. In 2010, President Bingu wa Mutharika of Malawi thought the flag's rising sun portrayed the country as an emerging economy. But his idea to change the flag to a full beaming sun was shot down by the public, and Parliament changed it back. Flags are one way to display patriotism. No flag is perhaps more globally recognised than the Stars and Stripes, and for many Americans, it symbolises freedom. In Britain, the Union Jack sells brand Britannia, a powerful tourism magnet. But flags can also stir controversy. The US's Confederate flag is a tribute to Southern heritage, but also a reminder of segregation. In Germany, displaying patriotism was long seen as taboo after decades of atoning for Nazi crimes. For some countries, defacing the flag itself is an offence that warrants jail time. The New Zealand Flag Project was sold as a chance to reshape the country's identity and stimulate patriotism. The turnout at this referendum will determine whether the people see it that way too. Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now to discuss exactly what a flag means to a nation is Ted Kaye in Oregon. He's a vexillologist and has consulted on flag change projects across the US and Fiji. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. First time I've ever spoken to a vexillologist. I'm honored. Are you surprised that New Zealanders care that much to put this whole thing to a vote?
I'm not surprised at all. Flags are tremendously meaningful to people as a symbol of themselves and their country. New Zealanders are no different from any other peoples, and they love the flag and they love the idea of the flag, and they feel very strongly about what flag should represent them.
There's a transnational aspect to this as well, where someone might not belong to a country, but that flag or many other flags sort of resonate with them ideologically. I think of the Dylan Roofs of this world. Tell me a little bit more about that and how flags bring people together for good or bad. I mean, I think, okay, for good, you can think of maybe the rainbow flag, but for bad, you can think of Dylan Roof trying to find every racist government, current or former, on the planet, and that resonated with him. Tell me a bit about that.
Flags are like any other symbol. They can be used for good or bad, and people will embrace a symbol that represents them or represents an idea that they embrace. Those ideas may be good and those ideas may be bad, and flags are no different from other symbols in that respect. In Dylan Roof's case, that's the shooter in Charleston. He was first depicted wearing a jacket that showed the apartheid-era South African flag and the flag of Rhodesia, both of which were white supremacist nations, and that showed his philosophy that later was depicted with him with the Confederate battle flag.
With all of that in mind, is there ever a case for a flag to be banned?
Certainly in Germany, after the Second World War, what they call the 1933-1945 period, the flag with the swastika has been banned. What in your mind is the worst flag in the world, completely mismatched to the country it represents? Well, that's a difficult question. What's the worst flag as a mismatch? I'm not sure there is a mismatch of a flag to a country, because the flag is what represents the country. The biggest issue, I think, is how do the people of a country embrace the flag design? And in this sense, New Zealand is a very unusual circumstance. New Zealand appears to be the first time that a country has put the question of the flag to a vote of the people. In all other cases we vexillologists know of, flags have been chosen by the government, by the people ruling the country or the people representing the people of the country. But in New Zealand, this is the first time a popular referendum has been held to vote on the flag. They're actually voting on two ideas. One is, should we change the flag? And should we replace the flag with this new design? That actually is what's costing so much about flag redesign in New Zealand. It's the cost of that referendum. Ted Kaye, thank you very much for joining us. It was fascinating picking your brain. As deforestation continues to destroy much of their natural habitat, elephants have been straying into villages across India, often causing widespread panic. In today's Picture This, we take a look at the wave of elephant attacks gripping India's rural communities.
Today's newsmaker has been Germany's extreme right party, the NPD. A request has been brought to the country's highest court to ban the party. But while the intention is to rid Germany of extremist ideology, there are fears that banning the group could push them underground, which could make them more popular and more violent. German authorities will need to prove that banning the party is essential to the democratic future of Germany. Since World War II, Germany has only banned 2 political parties. Both of those were in the 1950s. This attempt to outlaw the NPD half a century later puts the authorities in a difficult position. In order to safeguard democracy, they may have to ban political ideas. You've been watching this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garta. As always, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.